Hey guys, it's Julian. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make burial style tracks. We're going to be talking about everything today, not just like one element. I'm going to be really showing you not just how to make everything, but also how to make everything fit together. To go along with this video, I just dropped this template. The link is right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. It's just $5, but with this, as you can see, all of these samples you can pretty much switch out, right? Because it's all just MIDI here. So essentially, this gives you a really solid template with all these things that kind of like shows you how much stuff you need to have and has it all laid out, so you don't have to go and spend a bunch of time doing like your background percussions, but then you could go in and drop your own samples in, and you can move stuff around, and you can really get creative with it. So I wanted to make this just so that you guys could have something to work with. There's not a lot of stuff like this. I don't think there's anything exactly like this out there actually on the market. Obviously, a lot of us want to know how to do this, myself included. I wish this kind of stuff was available when I first discovered burials music back in the day. But yeah, so links at the top of the description. This also really helps support me. If you guys enjoyed these videos, definitely go grab that. Plus, you get a really awesome template to work with. Again, I really think this is better than anything I've seen on the market. So today, I'm going to be breaking this down and showing you, like I said, not just how to make every individual layer, but also how to make it all fit together. Thank you for the support, guys. Links at the top of the description, and let's dive in. So, we're at 135 BPM, pretty standard, like anything between maybe 125 to like 145, I would say, is pretty good for this style of music. Anything faster than that, and it tends to get like a little bit too fast. And anything slower, it can be a little bit boring too. So, the first thing we have up here is the kick. So as you can hear, we actually have two kicks. So this is something that we're doing pretty much throughout here. But a big part of this burial sound that everybody's kind of wondering how it sounds the way it does is basically he'll have one groove. Like this sounds like it should be one kick, right? Like one groove that one instrument is playing. But then playing it across a lot of different instruments. You can see that's pretty much all of what's happening down here with these hi-hats, where it's like this could really all be done with like 2 or 3 hi-hats. But by spreading all the notes across different hi-hats and having it be not just like the same one twice in a row, and then same thing up here with the kick, it just makes it feel more organic and more alive. So what I recommend you do, and the way like I did this, is you write like I said, like the kick pattern that would just work on one kick, and then you go and switch it out with different sounds after that. So I've got one here which is just a like that big punchy one. You can see this is 2 layers, so we have this, and then this kind of high-passed one on there, and then this one's a bit higher pitched. Right, like we have the big boomy one, which ironically I actually pitched that down a lot. We have the big boomy one going boom, and then we get the bump, bump, bump. And there's a lot of groove just there in those 2 elements. And this is something you got to keep in mind, is that it's not just all of these different things being in the track, but it's also like when you solo these elements, there should be like that groove to it, That's all happening in each of these individual little groups here, and then it's all coming together to make the whole track. It's not just the texture, it's actually very, very creative programming as well. And then on the group here, we actually just have a low pass filter. So here's that. And then with it, you can hear it actually just kind of makes this a bit more lo-fi. This is a really great technique if you're trying to get that kind of like crunchy lo-fi thing. I think a lot of people think you have to have like an old sampler, or maybe it's like a bit crusher or something like that. But actually, a lot of times, just low-passing stuff can really get that. And I'll show you that more with the rim shots and the hi-hats. But then we also have just a little bit of reverb on this just to kind of give it some space. Then we have the rim shots. So this on its own might sound a little bit crazy, but really all it is, I'll play it with the kick and you can kind of hear what's happening. Right, so it's these 2 are kind of grooving together. You can see we have, so just like 1 rim shot on the 2, 1 on the 4, so just pretty simple. And then there's this one in the middle, which I actually took off the grid a little bit to kind of make it a little bit more lively. But then you can hear that's kind of bouncing off because the kick goes. Right, so it's not just programming these for like this group or just to sound good with this, but also it's like different instruments kind of interacting with each other. You know, that's a really slick groove right there. And if you don't have that, you could have all of this stuff all day, right? Or all the cool strings and pads that you want. But it's like, it's not going to work unless you have this like really tight groove of these elements. So that's why we have that little rim shot in there. And these are all really simple. Most of these I'm just pitching down. That's kind of another secret to getting that like deep burial rim shot sound, is if you take like I'll show you the original sample here. See, like that's a really deep rim shot, or a really like kind of cracky rim shot. But then we pitch it down and shorten it, and then that's how you get that like. Like you guys know exactly the sound I'm talking about. Like the Archangel rim shot, I'm pretty sure was made with this type of technique. And then same deal with this one, and just pitching it down and shortening it. And then this one I didn't do as much to, but I just added a little bit of reverb to it so it would go like at the end there. That's actually kind of important for the groove, like how everything kind of like. And then it hits on that last rim shot with the reverb. You know, it's the effects kind of creating the groove. If you don't have the reverb on there, it's less impactful. You know, it's just kind of like a. That really makes it kind of like soar into that next part. And it's very small details, but again, like you see how fine the details have to be to get this kind of a sound. And yeah, and then we just have a low pass. Now this one's not doing that much at all, but again, just that little bit of high cut can really go a long way. And then we just have like a really short reverb on that, just to kind of give everything a little bit of atmosphere. And I like doing the groups like this, where you have like the kick group, and the rim shot group, and then the hi-hat group. Because I think if we tried to just do one low pass, like all of these pretty much have that same thing, just the low pass and the reverb. But I think if you tried to just do one for all of them, it wouldn't really work. This way we can get really specialized while still keeping certain things in groups so it all comes together. Because I think something with this style of music is that it all has to kind of have an even texture, right? You know, it has to kind of sound like all these drum sounds and all these percussions are coming from the same place. And something that really helps with that is just having that like overall low pass filter. But you don't want to do that on like see, because the hi-hats are a bit lower than that. And if we put this lower, you know, all of a sudden it doesn't sound as good. So it's really good to just have like groups of every similar sound, but not just like put all the drums into one group. And yeah, so then we have the hi-hats and percussion. So this might sound pretty crazy. It's actually, again, like a pretty simple groove. You know, it's just like kind of, you can put this all, like all these little clips, like, matter of fact, I'll just make a little MIDI clip and I'll show you. So, like if we take like these. Right, so with the hi-hats, this is pretty much the groove that you're hearing. I'll grab this hi-hat and put it on there so you can hear that. Right, and obviously the pitching isn't happening, but if I play that with the rim shot. Right, it's not that complicated. It's just, you write something like that, and you don't have to have all the pitches either. The pitches came later when you're actually like working with the individual sounds. But you write something like that that just has like a nice groove, and then you just take it and spread it across like, you know, you can see it might be up to like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or even 10 of these. But once you do that and you have them all interacting with each other, because it's still just that one groove that's written to have all the notes work together, you know, having all these different sounds, then you get the nuance, essentially, of all those different little hi-hat sounds. And that's what creates the groove, right? It's the placement of the notes combined with the texture, how long the note is, how long you hear it for, like all that kind of stuff. And then the other stuff around that, you know, it's pretty much just like this. Which these are just a bunch of these, like, little drum sounds that I took, and then you can see what I've done is I've actually shortened them a bit and pitched them down a lot. And that's just to kind of fill it in a little bit. Like if I play that with the rim shot, you can hear just adding even more groove and swing into the track. And then the other thing we have is just a bit of Foley percussion. Now this is recorded by me. What I did is I just had a bunch of different stuff on my desk. Like I have stuff in here, and you can just like record yourself doing like that, whether it's into your iPhone or into just like a computer, like a microphone's connected to your computer. I did it into this. And then what you do is you just take it, and while you're recording it, you're not really aiming for any specific notes or any specific placement. But then what happens is when you drag that onto a grid and it's unwarped, you can see like I don't even have this warped. You get little things that are going to slightly line up to the grid, and that creates percussion. Like right here where you see like if I play that with the metronome. Right, and that's completely random. I just recorded that, but that's essentially what you're trying to create here. So this is just like a long sample that I made of that, and then I just kind of lined it up, got it in some places where it sounded really cool with the groove, and then just chopped it. It's very simple, but you're just going to get a lot of interesting texture from the sounds. And yeah, and then on the group of all these percussions, so yeah, you can see I just have a bit of reverb, a bit of a low pass filter. The low pass is really going to make the difference on these too. Like if I turn that off, it doesn't quite have the same amount of feeling to it. And you can sit there and fumble around with tape saturation plugins and stuff like that all day, but it's like, at the end of the day, the low pass filter is a very simple effect, and it works really well for this. And it works even better if you have like a more interesting, obviously this is just like Ableton's low pass. If you have something that has like a bit more texture to it or kind of more character to it because it might be analog or whatever it is, you can get even more interesting sounds out of this. And yeah, so then we have the strings. So what's going on here is we have this one playing the chords, and then this one is just adding some kind of nice stuff on top. You need both of them because I think if you just have the chords, obviously this is very important. This is like kind of the main thing here. But if you just have that, it's not quite dynamic enough. Like it's too much of just kind of sitting on that one chord. I think when you add in these extra strings on top or whatever instrument it might be, just something that's kind of like accentuating the chord progression like that, like notes that are going to work really well with it but aren't just following it. It adds that movement, like having that one string just come in up high there. Like that kind of stuff makes a big difference. So for the first one, they're actually both pretty similar sounds. But for the first one, here are the chords. So it's playing, this is the chord progression to our track. G sharp, B, so G sharp minor, B major, and then D sharp minor. So what we're basically doing here is our root note, minor third, and then the fifth. Now if you look at this basic G sharp minor chord, you can see actually, like this is the most basic version of that. So it's actually just the three notes from that, but then the top note we're actually putting down an octave. And then there's just notes on top of that that are going to fit. Like here's another G sharp. There's a D sharp, which would be the fifth. And then we have a C sharp, which is the fourth. Then here, okay, so we have B. Another G sharp, which in the case of this would be the sixth. We have a D sharp there, so that's our major third. And then another B up top. So you can see, like, it's all just notes that, like, are very simple if you know this, like, G sharp minor key. And you don't even have to know the key that well. It's really just, like, keeping it simple and trying to say the most with the least amount of voices. And yeah, and then for the sound on this one, so it's this string ensemble. Tremolo here. I like the tremolo one because it kind of gives you a bit more texture. We have a low pass, so again, that same technique I've already shown you. A little bit of reverb, high pass filter, and then this auto pan, which is actually doing half notes. Now, you don't want too much of this, but just a little bit of movement. So it's kind of like, You know, it's just going to make it kind of work with that beat. And this is something that I think can happen a lot of times, right? Like, you know, you make the cool burial future garage type beat, and then you go and try to put it with a pad. And all of a sudden, you're just kind of floating around in space. And it's because the pad needs a little bit more movement that's going to sync up with the beat. So this works really well for that. You know, now you just kind of have it, like, moving, even if it's really subtle. And then with the second one, so yeah, again, we're just kind of following the progression, but we're playing, like, different notes that are just going to fit really well with that. And that's just string ensemble, tremolo, reverb. And then this one has that auto pan, but it's even heavier because you want this to be a bit more rhythmic. Then we have the bass line. So yeah, you can hear this is just like following the chords. I have it jump up an octave there. For the sound, this one's actually very simple. So it's a respace that we made with wavetable. So we just have a saw wave, the low pass filter with a pretty high resonance, which makes it a bit fatter if I turn the resonance down. So you don't really get that like overtone like you want. So I've got that. And then we just have the classic unison, drum bus, and a bit of erosion to kind of make it a bit more crunchy and a little bit more rough around the edges. Then we have the vocals. So this is just a vocal sample of like some nice kind of deep vocals like this. You know what it is basically you're going to take some chunks kind of from an acapella like this, like maybe a full song, and you just find the moments that are the most like deep and sort of like emotional for you. And it doesn't have to be what they're saying, because a lot of times you can't even tell what they're saying. But it's really just about like, after all that I still loved you. Right? And you can sample from YouTube. You can sample from like an acapella. You can record your own vocals. This is a YouTube sample, and we've just got it in here. I still loved you. You know, again, it's just the moments that are going to sound like it's crying. The most meaningful to you. Over here, I've done a technique that I've heard a lot in his tracks as well, where basically, so I have this, it's just one pitch. It's crying. But then we took this one and put it down. Crying. So guys. And yeah, you just get so much texture in there. And then I just have a little low pass to get that lo-fi effect. Reverb. And there we go. You know, it's more about like what's being sung. And then the last thing we have down here is the vinyl noise. Now I have two tracks of it. One is just kind of like a bed that's always playing. Right, that's really simple. That's something that you guys have seen and probably done before yourselves. But then what we also have actually is this track, where I just have two different ones. They have the same name, but it's two different samples. And they're just fading in. And then fading out. And then this one fades in. And you'll notice these are a lot crunchier, right? There's kind of like a contrast there, where this one's more like... And then these have more of that like kind of crunchy, like kind of thing in there. But then essentially, this creates more movement, because if you just have this one, obviously you'll get the sound, but there's not that much detail to that. You know, because Burial's music isn't, you know, it's more focused on textures and kind of making the sound just more interesting and have more movement to it. Just having this is going to be a little bit boring. So if you have this kind of like coming in and out, and then another one that sounds different kind of comes in and out, now listen to it. You know, and then you put that with everything else, and it's a little tiny detail that's going to make a huge difference and make everything just feel more alive. And it's going to be very subconscious for the listener, but it's going to really bring it all together, I think, and make it really feel like this is actually moving, and it's not just like a recording of vinyl noise being played in the background. And yeah, yeah, so that's gonna be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get this template where you can just drop in your own sounds and have like a really solid track in the style that you can start working on and really be able to learn from, and not just have to kind of have the blank canvas syndrome. The link is right at the top of the description to get this whole template. Again, you get everything, the samples, MIDI, the presets, plus the project file, so you can really work with this and learn from it. Plus, it really helps support me so I can keep bringing you guys new videos like this every single day with stuff that just is not out there on the internet and has not been covered this extensively. Thank you so much, everybody, for the support, and I'll see you tomorrow with another video.